Everyone thinks that the hardest part of starting a podcast is the techie stuff, the microphone, uploading it, editing it perfectly, publishing it to the podcasting apps. That is actually the easiest part. The hardest part about creating a podcast is creating a show that the right people want to listen to, growing it, and using that content strategically to grow your business. That is the hardest part. The strategy behind the show is much harder than any of the techie things. Hey, welcome back to Imperfect Action. This is episode 740. Today, I'm sharing 7 of the big mistakes to avoid if you are thinking about starting a podcast coming into 2024. A lot of people ask me, am I too late to start a podcast? Is it already oversaturated? My response is no, it is absolutely not oversaturated. There is still so much space for new podcasts out there. The difference now is, though, that you have to be really intentional with what you are creating, what you are putting out there. And the 7 mistakes that I'm going to share in this episode, if you can avoid these, this is going to set you up for a lot more success with your new show when you get it out there into the world. Mistake number 1, looking for the things that are working well when you're creating the strategy for your show. So I get asked this a lot. Steph, what's working well for podcasts at the moment? And if you are asking this, you are missing the point because podcasting is a long game. It's not about just jumping on a trend that's working really well right now. Because if you do that, you might find that when that trend stops working or everybody's jumped on the bandwagon and it's become, pretty popular, when that trend stops working, then you have to pivot. So your strategy isn't about jumping on what's working really well right now. And instead, thinking about what can you do that is going to bring you so much joy that you are going to want to keep podcasting forever. What do you love to talk about? What would you love to have your show be about? Who would you love to interview? What format would you love to create your show in? For example, this show, there's a reason why I do most of my episodes solo, because I like doing solo episodes. I find them much easier for me to create than for me to do interview episodes. Yeah, the show might have grown a lot faster if I'd had more guests on the show who could then share their episodes with their audiences. But the solo episodes for me are so much easier and they allow me to impact my audience in a different way. So that's why I chose my strategy. I didn't jump on it because it was working well. Mistake number 2, emulating a competitor's podcast format or topic because you think it's working really well for them. Just because it's working well for somebody else doesn't mean it's going to work well for you. And if someone is already listening to your competitor's show, why should they then switch and listen to your one that is basically similar, basically the same? Instead, what I would be looking for is where are the gaps in your particular niche or your particular subject area? For example, when I started this show, most business podcasts were 45-minute long interview episodes where you had to listen for the whole 45 minutes to get 2 actionable takeaways. So instead, I thought, well, here's an opportunity for me to create these shorter episodes that are much more actionable, that somebody can take what I'm teaching and go and implement it straight away without having to listen for 45 minutes. Mistake number 3, picking a super broad topic because you think that's what's going to attract more listeners. And I've talked about this in regards to niching your business as well. Typically, the bigger your niche, the bigger your market, the broader you want to go, the more competition you're going to be against, the more people you are competing against. Seth Godin has this beautiful analogy around making waves. It is much easier to make waves in a swimming pool than it is to make waves in an ocean. And it's the same when you are picking your business niche, when you are picking your podcast topic or your podcast audience. If you pick a narrower audience, it's going to be so much easier to make those waves, to become known in that area rather than competing against all of the other broader topics that are reaching a larger, broader audience. There are super, super, super niche podcasts out there that are super successful because they chose a really specific niche. And if you are thinking of taking on sponsors as a way to grow your revenue, then there are sponsors who will pay more for niche audiences because they want to reach that particular niche audience. So keep that in mind as well. Mistake number 4, thinking that your podcast will grow itself. Now, podcasting isn't an audience growth activity on its own. It is a nurturing activity. It is a way to build a connection with your audience and to share content with them that ultimately delivers value and moves them closer to buying from you. But your episodes won't just magically reach new people because discoverability on the podcast apps, it kind of sucks. And unless your show is in New and Noteworthy or in the top charts or it gets featured by Apple Podcasts or Spotify, your podcast isn't just going to reach people magically. So that means that you need to get your show in front of the right people. And that might look like being a guest on other podcasts and doing interviews there. It might look like optimizing your transcripts into blog posts and publishing those on your website and optimizing them for SEO so that somebody can, when they search that topic, they land on your website and they find that content, right? That's how you intentionally get your show in front of the right people. But it won't just attract the right people magically on its own. Mistake number 5, doing it without a strategy for how it will grow your business. And I talked about this last episode. I shared 10 ways you can use your show to grow your business. And I would really encourage you to think about how you can use your show, or how you will use your show, the strategy for it. Otherwise, you run the risk of it just becoming another thing that's on your to-do list, but that isn't actually driving any growth or isn't actually moving the needle in your business, but it's taking up your time. And there are so many ways that you can leverage it outside of just using it to get clients or grow your audience. There are so many other ways you can leverage your show. So go back and listen to that last episode because that will get you thinking about the strategy behind your episode. And if you are starting one, always come back to this question. How is this driving my business? How is this growing my business? And then that way, when you create the show, you can create it with that strategy in mind because that's what you decide to use the show as, or how you decide to use the show to grow your business. That's going to determine your topic that you talk about. That's going to determine your format. It's going to determine pretty much everything. Mistake number 6, worrying about what microphone you will use, where you will host it, or how you will edit it before you even know what your show is going to be about. Everyone thinks that the hardest part of starting a podcast is the techie stuff, the microphone, uploading it, editing it perfectly, publishing it to the podcasting apps. That is actually the easiest part. The hardest part about creating a podcast is creating a show that the right people want to listen to, growing it, and using that content strategically to grow your business. That is the hardest part. The strategy behind the show is much harder than any of the techie things because you actually have to think about it. Whereas the techie things, you can tick your way through the checklist of it. You can find how to do that online. I teach it inside the podcast launch plan as well. But the strategy, you have to be the person who is thinking critically about how this is going to grow your business. Mistake number 7, not being able to clearly and succinctly tell me what your podcast is about, who it is for. For example, this show, I can tell you really quickly, this is a bite-sized online business strategy podcast for online business owners with new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Great. That tells you what it is, who it's for, when you can expect new episodes. Your podcast topic is so important, and knowing who your listener is also so important. These can be the difference between a show that skyrockets and one that gets no listeners and you do 10 episodes and then give up because you haven't seen any traction. And inside my free masterclass, I'm letting you in on my simple strategy for a powerful podcast topic. You can watch that masterclass. It's called Your First 1,000 Listeners, How to Start a Podcast Without the Overwhelm. Head to stephtaylor.co/podcasting, or if you prefer, you can DM me on Instagram. I'm there at stephtaylor.co. Send me the word podcasting and I will send you the link to register for that masterclass. There you have it, 7 mistakes to avoid if you are thinking of launching a podcast in 2024. If you're not already subscribed to the show, hit the subscribe button or the follow button, and it just means you'll get each new episode straight to your podcast app every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thank you so much for listening. Catch you next time.